I was taken to the hospital with a severe headache. I called everyone, children, daughters-in-law, and even the grandchildren, but no one came. My daughter-in-law's reply echoed in my ears like a cruel whisper. "We're on a family vacation. Don't bother us." Those words felt heavier than the pain burning inside my skull. By the time they finally came to the hospital, all they found was a note I had left behind. A note that said, "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and tell me from which city you're listening, so I can know how far my story has reached." The pain had started like a dull throb at the back of my head, but within minutes it turned into something terrifying, as if my skull was splitting apart. I remember looking at the clock, 3:47 a.m., the red digital numbers glowing on the nightstand while I tried to breathe through the agony. At 66, I had felt headaches before, but this was different. This was the kind of pain that made you wonder if your body was giving up. My hands trembled as I grabbed the phone. I dialed my only son, Daniel. His voicemail picked up immediately, his cheerful recorded voice sounding almost mocking in that moment. "Daniel, it's Mom," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. "I'm having terrible head pain. I think I need to go to the hospital. Please call me back." I waited. 10 minutes. 15. 20. The silence mocked me. No call back. I tried again, and again the call slid into voicemail. Then I tried my daughter-in-law, Claire. She had never been warm toward me, but in an emergency, I hoped. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice sharp with irritation. "Do you know what time it is, Margaret?" she snapped. "Claire, I'm sorry. I'm having severe pain in my head. I think I need to call an ambulance." "Is Daniel there?" There was a pause, muffled voices in the background. Then she returned colder than ever. "We're on a family vacation, Margaret. We came here to have uninterrupted time with the kids. Please don't call again unless someone is literally dying." And just like that, the line went dead. I sat staring at the phone, her words stabbing me deeper than the headache. A family vacation. With my son, with the grandchildren I had helped raise. Yet I wasn't family enough to be included, or even to be cared for when I might have been dying. My chest tightened as the pain in my head dragged me to the floor. Somehow, through tears and dizziness, I managed to dial 911. When the paramedics arrived, they found me collapsed near the kitchen door, barely able to speak. They asked questions, their voices sounding distant. "Any emergency contacts?" "Yes, Daniel. My son," I muttered. They tried his number, but no one answered. The ambulance ride was a blur of flashing lights and the siren's cry. At the hospital, everything moved quickly. CT scans, blood tests, doctors speaking words I could hardly process. A woman doctor, kind-eyed and calm, finally sat beside me. "Mrs. Green," she said gently, "you've had a severe tension headache likely caused by stress. Your blood pressure was dangerously high. We'll keep you overnight for observation." I nodded, too weak to argue, my body heavy with exhaustion. "Did anyone call my son again?" The doctor's face softened. "We tried, but no answer." That's when the truth settled inside me like ice. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The hospital room was dim, the monitors beeping rhythmically, the corridor sounds faint in the background. I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, my mind swirling with memories of all the years I had given, all the sacrifices I had made. At what point had I become disposable to the very people I loved most? A nurse named Rosa came by around midnight. She had kind eyes and spoke softly as she adjusted my four. "Are you comfortable, Mrs. Green? Do you need more pain relief?" "No," I whispered. "Has anyone called for me?" She shook her head, sympathy written across her face. "I'm sorry, dear. Try to get some rest. Sometimes family doesn't know how to handle things like this." But I knew better. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't fear. This was indifference. I must have drifted off because the next thing I knew, sunlight was spilling through the blinds and another nurse was bringing me a tray of bland hospital breakfast. My phone sat motionless on the table. No missed calls. No texts. Nothing. As I picked at the rubbery eggs, a terrible clarity came over me. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse. This was the truth of my relationship with my son and his wife. I had given and given, always convincing myself I was investing in family, But in reality, I had simply been useful. A grandmother who babysat when they wanted nights off. A mother who lent money whenever there was a crisis. A woman who asked for nothing except to be included, to be loved, to matter. But I didn't matter. Not to them. The realization should have broken me. Instead, a strange calm began to form. For the first time in years, I saw through the fog. I had been living in a cage of my own making, built from years of pleasing, hoping, waiting. And as I sat there with the taste of hospital eggs in my mouth and silence in the air, a quiet but powerful thought took root inside me. Maybe it's not too late to take my life back. The morning passed slowly, every minute dragging like an hour. The doctors and nurses came in and out, checking my vitals, adjusting my asking the same questions in different ways. But no matter how many times I blinked at that silent phone on the bedside table, it stayed the same. No calls. No messages. Just emptiness. When Dr. Patel, the physician assigned to my case, returned for her rounds, she smiled softly, trying to hide the heaviness in her eyes. "How are you feeling this morning, Mrs. Green?" "Different," I said quietly, surprising myself. My voice was steadier than it had been since the night before. She tilted her head. "Different how?" I swallowed, feeling the dryness in my throat. I've just realized something. When you have a patient with no family support, what do you usually recommend?" Her gaze lingered on me for a moment, as if deciding how honest to be. "That depends," she said carefully. "Are you asking hypothetically?" "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "I'm asking because I think I'm about to become that patient." For a second, her professional mask slipped, and I saw something raw in her expression. Pity mixed with understanding. She pulled up a chair, sitting close enough that her words felt personal. "Mrs. Green, I've been a doctor for over 2 decades. I've seen all kinds of families. Some are supportive, some are complicated, and some don't know how to love in the way their relatives need them to. You can't control how other people treat you, but you can control how you respond to it." Her words landed somewhere deep in my chest, and I found myself clutching the thin hospital blanket a little tighter. "And what if I'm tired of responding by pretending it doesn't hurt?" I asked. "Then maybe it's time," she said gently, "to stop pretending." She left after that, but her words stayed behind, echoing louder than the beeps of the monitor. The pain medicine dulled my headache, but not the ache in my chest. Memories rushed in like a flood, each one sharper than the last. I thought about Daniel's wedding 8 years ago, how I had smiled through the stress, writing check after check for things they just couldn't manage on their own. I remembered how Claire had leaned in at the rehearsal dinner and whispered, "You're such a blessing, Margaret. We couldn't have done this without you." I had believed her. I had believed every soft word, every fake smile, every moment where I thought I was being included because I mattered. But slowly, over the years, the inclusion became less about me and more about what I could provide. When their first apartment needed new furniture, I bought it. When they wanted a bigger wedding venue, I paid for it. When they were short on their mortgage, I covered it. And every single time, I told myself, this is what family does. But lying in that hospital bed, I realized family wasn't supposed to feel like a one-way street. I could still remember the first time Claire made me feel like I was crossing a line. Emma, my first grandchild, had taken her very first steps in my living room. Her tiny hands had wobbled in the air, her chubby feet pressing against the carpet, and she had stumbled right into my arms. Tears had filled my eyes. I had grabbed my phone, eager to share the news. "She's been walking for weeks at home," Claire had said flatly when I called, her voice cool, dismissive. "You probably just didn't notice because she's more comfortable with us." My heart had dropped, but I laughed it off, telling myself new mothers could be sensitive. I didn't want to cause conflict. But the pattern only grew clearer with time. I became the babysitter, the wallet, the errand runner. Every time I gave, they took. Every time I hoped for love, I was reminded of my place. I didn't realize then that I was teaching them how to treat me. Rosa came by again around noon, the same nurse who had checked on me in the night. She was carrying a small tray with tea. "Thought you might like something warm instead of that terrible coffee they serve here," she said with a kind smile. Her small kindness pierced me deeper than she probably realized. I took the cup with shaking hands. "Thank you," I whispered, tears stinging at the corner of my eyes. "It means more than you know." She looked at me for a moment, as if she did know. Sometimes the people we expect the most from, they're the ones who fail us the hardest, she said quietly. Then she patted my shoulder before leaving the room. Her words settled into me like a seed, and I knew she was right. By the time evening came, the silence of my phone had transformed from a wound into something else. Proof. Proof that I had given everything to people who wouldn't even pick up the phone when I needed them most. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the pain this time, but because my mind was racing. I asked the nurse for a pen and notepad. My hand, though frail, began to move across the paper. I made 3 lists. The first, everything I've given them. Money, time, energy, pieces of myself I would never get back. It filled pages. The second, what I've received in return. That list was embarrassingly short. An occasional thank you, a few staged smiles for photos, nothing more. The third, what I want for the rest of my life. This one was the hardest. I stared at the blank page for a long time. What did I want? I had spent so many years living for them that I had forgotten what it meant to want something for myself. But slowly, almost shyly, I began to write. I wanted to travel. I had always dreamed of Italy, but every time I saved, something came up, a bill, a family emergency. I wanted to take an art class, something I loved as a young woman but had abandoned when Daniel was born. I wanted friendships that didn't depend on what I could provide. Most of all, I wanted to stop living on the margins of other people's happiness. For the first time in decades, the list wasn't about what they needed. It was about me. And as I set the pen down, I realized something that made my hands tremble. The woman who had walked into this hospital was dying. Not from a headache, not from high blood pressure, but from a life of being invisible. But maybe, just maybe, she wasn't dead yet. The next morning, the hospital room felt different. The fluorescent lights hummed softly, and the world outside the window glowed with muted colors of dawn. I sat upright in the bed, my notepad resting on my lap, my fingers still smudged with ink from the lists I had written the night before. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for my phone to ring. I wasn't staring at it, hoping for Daniel's name to flash across the screen. The silence wasn't kindness, but it was truth, and truth, as painful as it was, felt steadier than lies. When Dr. Patel came in for her morning rounds, she paused, studying me with cautious curiosity. "You look different today, Mrs. Green," she said. "I feel different," I admitted. My voice surprised me. There was no desperation in it, no tremor begging for validation. Just calm. "Good different?" she asked, half smiling. "Yes," I said after a pause. "Clear-headed. For the first time in a very long time." She nodded approvingly, but her eyes still searched mine, as though she knew something bigger was shifting inside me. After she left, I found myself staring again at my lists. The third one, what I want for the rest of my life, wasn't finished. I added another line. I want to stop apologizing for wanting happiness. The nurse Rosa walked in shortly after with a warm towel for my forehead. "You slept any better last night?" she asked. I shook my head with a faint smile. "Not really. But I wrote." "Wrote what?" she asked, curious. "Everything I've given. Everything I've received. And what I want now," I said, tapping the notepad. Her eyes softened. "That's brave." "It's sad," I corrected, my throat tight. "Because I realized I've been nothing more than an open wallet and a free babysitter for years. I kept thinking it was love. But it wasn't." She placed the towel gently on my forehead, her hands warm, grounding. "Sometimes," she said softly, "people confuse obligation with love. But real love, it shows up. Especially when you're at your weakest." Her words almost broke me. I turned away, blinking hard, but the tears came anyway. I thought about all the times I had shown up. The countless evenings I drove 40 minutes each way to watch Emma and little Thomas so Daniel and Claire could go out to dinner. The time I emptied my savings account to help with the down payment on their first house. The endless Saturday nights when I canceled plans with friends because they wanted just one more favor. And still, when my head felt like it was being crushed, when I truly needed them, they were sipping cocktails by a resort pool in Cabo. My phone buzzed suddenly. My heart leapt before I even looked, like a reflex I hadn't yet unlearned. But it wasn't Daniel. It was a promotional text from a store I hadn't visited in years. I laughed bitterly, wiping at my eyes. Even strangers checked in more than my own son. The hours crept by. Around midday, a social worker came in to discuss discharge planning. She sat at the foot of my bed, her clipboard balanced on her knees. "Mrs. Green, do you have someone at home who can support you after you're discharged?" I hesitated. My instinct was to lie, to cover for them, to say, "Yes, my son will help." But the truth sat on my tongue, heavy and undeniable. "No," I said finally. "I'll manage on my own." She raised her eyebrows, scribbled something on her paper, then looked at me again with quiet respect. "That honesty will take you further than you think," she said before leaving. That evening, when the halls grew quieter and the hospital dimmed its lights, Rosa found me awake again, sitting with the notepad open. "Still writing?" she asked gently. I nodded. "I'm making a new list. It's called, What I'll Never Do Again." Her smile widened. "And what's on it so far?" I read aloud, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll never wait by the phone for people who don't care enough to call. I'll never pour myself empty to keep someone else full. I'll never let my worth depend on people who treat me like I'm disposable." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Good. That's the kind of list you keep forever." That night, I dreamt of Emma and Thomas. In my dream, they were running through a meadow, their laughter like music. Emma turned back to wave at me, her hair flying in the wind. "Grandma, come with us," she shouted. I started to run, but Claire appeared out of nowhere, blocking the path. "She doesn't belong here," she said coldly. "She has her own life." And then the children faded into the distance, leaving me standing alone. I woke with tears soaking my pillow. For the first time I allowed myself to see the truth in that dream. I wasn't really a part of their family. I was staff. Convenient when needed, dismissed when not. The following morning, Dr. Patel stopped by again. She studied my chart, then looked at me seriously. "Your blood pressure has stabilized. I think we can discharge you tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I repeated softly. The word felt strange, like both freedom and fear tied together. Tomorrow meant stepping back into my life. But what kind of life was waiting for me? As she left, I picked up my notepad one last time and wrote 4 words at the bottom of the page. "It starts tomorrow morning." And this time I believed it. The morning of my discharge came faster than I expected. A nurse entered with a cheerful good news, as if this was the moment I had been waiting for. My vitals were stable, the headache had eased, and they believed I was strong enough to go home. She handed me the papers to sign, instructions about medicine and diet, and asked the same question everyone seemed to ask. "Do you have someone to pick you up?" I looked at her for a long moment before shaking my head. "No. I'll take a cab." She hesitated as though she wanted to say something, then simply nodded. "You're a strong woman. You'll be okay." Her words echoed in my ears. "You'll be okay." But as I packed my small bag, folded my nightgown into it, and slipped my notepad inside, I wondered, what does okay look like for someone who has just realized she doesn't really belong to her own family? The ride home was quiet. I sat in the back seat of the taxi, watching familiar streets pass by as though they belonged to another world. The houses, the little park where I once pushed Emma on the swing, the corner store where I bought snacks for Thomas, everything felt the same, but I felt different. When the taxi stopped in front of my cottage, I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, staring at the house. I had lived there for 15 years, ever since the divorce. I had thought of it as a temporary place at first, a stepping stone. But it had become my entire world. And yet, I realized I had never really seen it. I had been too busy rushing to Daniel's house, too busy answering Claire's calls, too busy being available for everyone else. Inside, the silence wrapped around me. The living room smelled faintly of lavender from an old candle I had forgotten to light. The guest room was neatly made up, waiting for visitors who never came. The kitchen counter held a fruit bowl I had filled before falling sick, the bananas already brown. I stood in the center of my home and whispered out loud, "This is mine." The words trembled but felt powerful. The first thing I did was unplug the landline phone. 4 years, I had left it connected, waiting for Daniel to call, waiting for the children's voices. I had sat by that phone on birthdays, on holidays, on nights when I felt lonely. But no more. If they wanted me, they could call my cell. I was done waiting. The second thing I did was open the drawer where I kept travel brochures. Italy, France, Ireland. They had been sitting there for years, collecting dust, little pieces of dreams I had put on hold. My fingers lingered on the one for Italy. Pictures of Rome, Florence, Tuscany. I had once told Daniel about it, and he had laughed. "Mom, travel is expensive. Save your money for the grandkids. We'll all go someday together." But someday had never come. And now I understood it never would. Unless I made it happen for myself. I spread the brochures across the kitchen table, staring at them like they were maps to another life. Maybe they were. Evening fell, and for the first time in years, I didn't call Daniel to check in. Instead, I poured myself a small glass of wine, something Claire had once mocked me for. "Grandmothers shouldn't drink," she had said with a smirk. "It looks tacky." Her voice echoed in my head, but I pushed it away. I sipped slowly, tasting freedom more than wine. I carried the glass outside into the little garden I had neglected. The roses were overgrown, the soil dry, weeds curling between the stones. I sat on the old bench, watching the sun sink into the horizon, painting everything gold. For years, I had sat in this very spot while waiting for my son's car to pull into the driveway, my heart leaping at every pair of headlights. Tonight, there was only silence. And for the first time, silence didn't mean rejection. It meant peace. I thought about the past, about Christmas mornings when I had baked cinnamon rolls and prepared stockings for Emma and Thomas, only to spend the day alone when Daniel and Claire decided to have family time. I thought about birthdays when I sat by the phone, waiting for a call that never came. Each memory was like a thorn pressing into me, but instead of breaking me, it made me stronger. I remembered the Christmas I had spent entirely alone. I had bought a small tree, decorated it with care, and wrapped presents for the children. At noon, after hours of waiting, I finally called Claire. She answered with laughter in the background, the sound of children unwrapping gifts. "Oh, Margaret, we decided to keep Christmas morning just us this year. You understand, right?" Yes, I had understood. Too well. I wiped at my eyes, the garden blurring through my tears. "Never again," I whispered. "Never again will I wait for someone to give me permission to feel like family." As the night grew darker, I walked back inside, the quiet house greeting me like a friend. I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up my notepad, and added another line to my list. I want to live a life that belongs to me. And for the first time in decades, I believed I could. The first few days at home felt strange, almost unreal. Every corner of the house carried memories of my son and his family, but instead of warmth, those memories now stung like paper cuts. The small couch in the living room where Emma once curled up beside me with her favorite book. The guest room where I had placed extra blankets for when they promised to stay the night, but never did. The kitchen table where I had laid out birthday cakes that were never eaten. I walked from room to room slowly, letting each memory sink in, not pushing it away this time. It was like peeling back layers of denial I had wrapped myself in for years. And the truth was hard to face. They had used me, and I had allowed it. The hardest room to enter was the guest room. I had set it up lovingly years ago, with toys in a basket, coloring books on the shelf, and soft blankets folded at the edge of the bed. It looked untouched, like a museum of hopes that had never come true. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hand over the smooth quilt. "You never even stayed," I whispered into the emptiness. That night, I didn't bother cooking a big dinner. For years, I had always made family-sized meals, ready in case Daniel and the kids stopped by. Now, I boiled pasta just for myself, added some butter, and ate in silence. At first, the silence pressed against me, heavy and lonely. But after a while, I realized it was better than the false noise I used to live with. Phone calls only made when they needed something, visits only when convenient for them. On the third day, I called my neighbor, Evelyn. She was a woman I'd exchanged pleasantries with for years but never truly spent time with. When she picked up, her voice carried real concern. "Margaret, I heard you weren't well. How are you feeling?" Her kindness nearly undid me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Better. I wanted to ask you something. Would you ever consider traveling? Maybe to Italy?" There was a pause, then a burst of laughter that sounded like pure light. "Italy? Are you serious?" "Yes. Completely serious. It's something I've always dreamed of, and I thought maybe it would be nicer with a friend. Her joy was immediate and genuine. "Oh my goodness, yes. I've been dreaming of Italy for years." "When were you thinking?" "Soon," I said, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled without forcing it. That night, I didn't feel alone. I felt hopeful. The following day, I opened the old shoebox where I kept my savings documents. 4 years, I had dipped into my savings for Daniel, helping with house payments, car repairs, preschool tuition, endless emergencies. The box was lighter than it should have been, but it still held enough. Enough for Italy. Enough for me. I spent hours online, researching flights and tours, my heart racing like a young girl planning her first adventure. My fingers hovered over the book now button more than once, but fear always pulled me back. What would Daniel say if he found out I was spending money on myself? What would Claire say? Then the truth struck me so hard I laughed bitterly. They wouldn't say anything. Because they never ask. They wouldn't even know unless I told them. That thought gave me courage. I didn't click book now yet, but I left the page open on my laptop. Just seeing it there felt like a small rebellion. By evening, I was restless. I went into the garden, pulling at weeds that had overtaken the roses. My hands grew dirty, the soil caking under my nails, but I didn't care. It felt grounding, real. As I dug, Evelyn appeared at the fence, holding a cup of tea. "You're out here late," she said. "I'm fixing what I neglected," I replied. She leaned on the fence, watching me. "It's funny, isn't it? We spend so much time fixing everyone else's lives, we forget to tend our own gardens." Her words hit deeper than she probably realized. I stared at the rose bush, its thorns sharp, its flowers still trying to bloom despite neglect. In that moment I saw myself. I looked at her, my throat tight. "Evelyn, can I ask you something? If you gave and gave to people who never gave anything back, what would you call that?" She didn't hesitate. "Unfair." "And what if they were your family?" I asked. She sipped her tea slowly. "Then I'd say family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who actually shows up for you." Her words echoed in my chest long after she went inside. That night, lying in bed, I reached for my notepad again. I added to my list. I want relationships that are real. I want people in my life who show up. As I closed my eyes, I realized something important. For years, I had been afraid of being alone. But maybe being alone wasn't the worst thing. Maybe the worst thing was being surrounded by people who made you feel alone. And I wasn't going to live like that anymore. The weekend arrived quietly. Normally, weekends meant rushing to Daniel's house to watch the children or cooking meals large enough to feed a family that never truly saw me as family. But this weekend was different. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed home. For the first time in years, my schedule was not dictated by their needs. The silence of my cottage felt heavy at first, but slowly it began to feel like something else. Freedom. I woke early on Saturday morning, the sunlight pouring through the thin curtains. My body still carried the weight of the hospital stay, but my mind was clearer than ever. I made myself coffee, strong and hot, and sat at the kitchen table with the brochures spread out again. Rome. Florence. Tuscany. My eyes traced the pictures slowly, imagining myself standing in those cobbled streets, tasting food made with love, breathing in air that belonged to no one but me. A part of me still resisted. For decades, I had trained myself to think of others first. What if the children need me? What if Daniel calls? What if Claire gets upset? But then another voice, firmer this time, answered back. What if they don't? What if they never even notice you're gone? That thought shook me. It wasn't bitterness. It was truth. And truth was finally louder than fear. By afternoon, I felt restless, so I decided to tidy the house. I moved through each room slowly, deliberately. In the living room, I opened a drawer filled with photographs. Some were from years ago. Daniel as a little boy, his smile wide and innocent. Those pictures made me smile through tears. But then came the newer ones, the staged family portraits Claire insisted on, where I was always placed at the edge, half-cropped, almost invisible. I stared at one photo where Claire's parents stood proudly beside my son and grandchildren, while I sat on the far side like an afterthought. My hands trembled as I slid those photos back into the drawer. Not this time. Not anymore. In the evening, Evelyn knocked on my door. She carried a plate covered in foil. "I made too much stew," she said cheerfully. "Thought you might like some." Her kindness warmed me. We sat at the table together, eating her stew and laughing about small things. Gardening disasters, neighborhood gossip, the stray cat that kept sneaking into her yard. It felt simple, but it felt real. She wasn't there because she needed anything from me. She was there because she wanted to be. At one point, she leaned closer. "You know, Margaret, you look lighter. Happier. What's changed?" I hesitated, then answered honestly. "I stopped waiting for people who don't show up." Her smile widened. "Good for you. That's the beginning of everything." That night, after she left, I stood by the window and watched the stars. My phone buzzed suddenly, and for the first time in days, it was Daniel's name on the screen. My heart leapt, then sank again as fear mixed with anger. I let it ring. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Not yet. When it finally stopped, a voicemail appeared. "Hey Mom, it's me. We just got back from Cabo. It was incredible. The kids had such a great time. Anyway, hope you're doing okay. Call me when you can." That was it. No apology. No mention of the hospital. Nothing but cheerful words about his vacation, as if I hadn't almost collapsed alone in my kitchen. My chest ached, but this time I didn't cry. Instead, I picked up my notepad and wrote, "Stop mistaking crumbs for love." The next morning, I listened to the voicemail again, just to be sure I hadn't misheard. But no, it was exactly what it was. Empty. I deleted it and blocked the number temporarily. My fingers shaking but my heart steady. Later that day, Evelyn stopped by again, holding her gardening gloves. "I thought maybe we could fix up your roses," she said. We spent hours in the garden, pulling weeds, trimming stems, and turning the soil. My back ached, my knees complained, but my spirit felt alive. As the sun set, we sat on the bench, sipping lemonade, and she asked about Italy. "Are you really going to go?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said firmly. "I don't know when yet, but I'm going." Her eyes lit up. "Then count me in. Life's too short to keep waiting." That night, I lay in bed thinking about her words. Life is too short to wait. How many years had I already lost, waiting for Daniel to treat me like I mattered? Waiting for Claire to accept me? Waiting for the grandchildren to choose me over the stories they were told? Too many. On Monday morning, I finally called the hospital's patient advocate. I asked about updating my emergency contacts, changing my healthcare directives, and making sure Daniel was no longer the only person they would call in an emergency. It felt terrifying, like cutting a cord that had tied me to him for decades. But it also felt right. By Tuesday, I had scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. I wanted advice about my finances, about protecting what I had left, about ensuring that if something happened to me, the people who had used me for so long wouldn't get to decide my future. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, was calm and professional. "Mrs. Green, you're not the first parent to come to me with this kind of story," he said gently. "You're doing the right thing. It's never too late to take control." I left his office with a folder full of documents and a strange new feeling in my chest. Strength. That evening, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat at the table surrounded by travel brochures and legal papers. The house was quiet, but this time it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like possibility. For so many years, I had defined myself by what Daniel and his family needed from me. I had lived for their approval, their scraps of affection. But sitting there, with ink stains on my fingers and the faint smell of roses on my clothes, I realized something powerful. I didn't need their approval anymore. I needed my own. And for the first time in decades, I was ready to give it. Wednesday morning started with a strange kind of calm. The house was quiet, the air outside smelled faintly of rain, and for once I didn't feel the heavy weight of waiting for someone to call. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the garden. The roses Evelyn and I had trimmed looked neater, though still imperfect, like me, damaged, but trying to grow again. Halfway through my tea, the doorbell rang. My stomach tightened. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I peeked through the peephole, my breath caught. Daniel stood there, holding Emma's hand in one and Thomas's in the other. They looked small and uncertain, their eyes wide as if they weren't sure why they had been brought. I opened the door slowly, leaving the chain on. "Daniel." "Mom, we need to talk," he he said quickly, his tone rehearsed. I looked down at Emma and Thomas. Their faces were confused, almost frightened. My heart cracked in two. Why are they here? I asked quietly. Because they're asking questions, Daniel replied. They don't understand why you don't want to see them anymore. Emma's lip trembled. Grandma, did we do something bad? The words hit me like a knife. I unlatched the chain and knelt down in front of her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Oh, sweetheart, no. You didn't do anything bad. I love you both so much. This isn't about you. Her eyes searched mine. Then why don't you come over anymore? Before I could answer, Daniel interrupted. Because Grandma's been busy with her new life. Isn't that right, Mom? His tone was sharp, almost accusing, and I realized instantly what was happening. He had brought the children as pawns. I stood slowly, my body shaking with anger. Daniel, don't you dare put this on them. Don't you dare make them believe I don't want them. Then why don't you? He shot back, his voice rising. Why are you acting like this? You've always been there for us, and now suddenly you're different. I'm different because I almost died alone on my kitchen floor while you were on vacation. My voice cracked, tears filling my eyes. I called you. I begged for help. Claire told me not to bother unless I was literally dying. And you never called back. Do you know what that felt like, Daniel? To realize that your own son wouldn't pick up the phone when you needed him most. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to the children. Mom, don't be dramatic in front of the kids. You're fine now. Emma squeezed my hand. Grandma, are you sick? I forced a smile for her sake. I was, baby, but I'm better now. Don't you worry. Thomas looked at me with big, worried eyes. Do you still love us? I pulled them both into my arms, hugging them tightly, breathing in the smell of their hair. I will always love you. Always. But loving you doesn't mean I can let myself be treated badly anymore. Do you understand? They didn't. Not really. How could they? They were just children. But they clung to me, and for a moment, I almost caved. I almost said I would come back, babysit, do whatever it took just to keep them close. But then I remembered the hospital bed, the silence of the phone, the lists I had written with trembling hands. And I knew I couldn't go back. I released them gently and looked at Daniel. Take them home. And don't ever use them like this again. His face darkened. They're my children. Don't tell me how to raise them. Then raise them better than this, I whispered. Because teaching them to lie, to manipulate, to believe their grandmother doesn't love them, that's not raising them, Daniel. That's breaking them. The silence that followed was heavy. He grabbed the children's hands and pulled them toward the car. Emma looked back at me, her eyes full of tears. My heart shattered, but I stayed strong. I waved to her, forcing a smile, even as she mouthed, I love you. When the door closed behind me, I leaned against it, shaking, the sobs finally breaking free. My whole body trembled with the force of them. For years, I had held back my tears, always putting on a brave face, always telling myself things would get better. But now the truth was out in the open. My son had chosen convenience over compassion. And I had chosen myself. Later that afternoon, Evelyn knocked on my door, concern etched across her face. I saw Daniel here earlier. Everything okay? I wiped my swollen eyes, forcing a smile. He brought the kids. Tried to guilt me back into being their babysitter. Her expression hardened. That's low. Yes, I whispered. But I didn't give in. She placed a hand on my arm. Good. Don't. That evening, I sat at my table again with my notepad. I added a new line to my list. I will not let guilt chain me again. The next day, the harassment began. At first, it was phone calls, Daniel alternating between angry and pleading, Claire leaving voicemails that dripped with manipulation. Margaret, this is ridiculous. The kids are crying for you. Do you really want to hurt innocent children? I deleted each one without listening all the way through. But by Thursday, it escalated. Evelyn knocked on my door, worry in her eyes. Margaret, I don't want to alarm you, but Claire's car has been parked outside your house for hours. I saw her yesterday too. She was following you to the grocery store. A chill ran through me. I had noticed the silver SUV in my rearview mirror but thought it was coincidence. Now I wasn't so sure. She's been taking pictures, Evelyn added quietly. I think you need to protect yourself. That night, I sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed every moment. Claire's cold words, Daniel's silence, the children's confused faces. I could feel the walls of my old life closing in, trying to drag me back. But I wouldn't let them. I reached for my notepad and wrote the words that would change everything. I deserve peace. Even if I have to fight for it. Friday morning started with Evelyn knocking on my door again, her face pale. She held a sheet of paper in her hand, folded but trembling slightly. Margaret, she said softly, I think you need to see this. I took the paper, confused. When I unfolded it, my stomach twisted. It was a screenshot from Facebook. Claire's account. Heartbreaking situation with my mother-in-law. After everything our family has done for her, she has cut us off completely. She refuses to see her grandchildren. We don't know what we did wrong, but please keep our family in your thoughts during this difficult time. Below the post were pictures of Emma and Thomas, their faces sad, their little arms wrapped around each other. The caption read, They keep asking where Grandma went. My hands shook so hard the paper nearly slipped. Evelyn touched my arm gently. She's trying to turn people against you. The comments beneath the post were worse. Strangers calling me selfish. Friends of Claire saying things like, how can a grandmother abandon her grandkids? And ungrateful old woman. Each word was like a stone being thrown at me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, the world spinning around me. Evelyn guided me to a chair. Margaret. Listen. This isn't about you. This is about control. Don't let her win. But the humiliation cut deep. 4 years, I had been quiet, supportive, dependable. I had bent myself into pieces just to be liked. And now I was being painted as a villain. That afternoon, I called the lawyer I had met earlier in the week, Mr. Harris. My voice shook as I explained everything. The car outside my house, the pictures being taken, the online posts. He listened carefully, his voice calm. Mrs. Green, what you're describing is harassment. Possibly stalking. And the online defamation. Well, we can address that legally too. Won't this make them angrier? I whispered, afraid of what pushing back might bring. Probably, he said honestly. But it will also make it clear you are serious about boundaries. And it creates a record if we need to pursue a restraining order. By the end of the call, he promised to draft a cease and desist letter. Something official, something strong enough to make Daniel and Claire understand they couldn't keep pushing me. That evening, I went to my first art class. It was something I had written on my list weeks ago, and now I was determined to follow through. The room smelled of paints and charcoal, and the teacher, Patricia, welcomed me warmly. For 3 hours, I lost myself in colors, in strokes of a brush, in the quiet company of others who were simply creating for the joy of it. Nobody there cared about my family drama. Nobody asked me for favors. For the first time in decades, I felt like a person, not a resource. During the break, Patricia sat beside me, studying the landscape I had been sketching. You have a natural eye for color, she said kindly. I laughed nervously. Not since I was young. I always meant to get back to it, but life got in the way. Her smile was knowing. Life always gets in the way. But it's never too late to reclaim the things that bring us joy. Her words clung to me all night. The next morning, Mr. Harris called. The letter has been delivered, he said firmly. Expect some resistance, but remember, you don't have to face it alone. Document everything. He was right. And he wasn't the only one who understood. That same day, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was elderly, gentle. Mrs. Green? My name is Dorothy. I saw what your daughter-in-law posted online, and I just wanted to tell you, you're not alone. I went through something very similar with my own children. Her words startled me. You did? Yes. They drained me for years. And when I finally said no, they turned everyone against me. It was horrible. But I survived. You will too. Please know this, it gets better. We talked for almost an hour. Dorothy told me about her family, about the years she had spent trying to buy their love, and about how walking away had been the hardest but bravest thing she had ever done. When we hung up, I felt lighter. That night, I pulled out my notepad and created 3 new lists. The first, what they took from me. It stretched across 3 pages. Money, time, health, peace of mind. The second, what I got in return. 2 lines. Staged photos and occasional thank yous. The third, what I want moving forward. This time, I filled page after page. Travel. Art. Friendships that didn't depend on transactions. Even small things, gardening, reading, laughing again. Each word felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had long buried. But even with that strength, the harassment didn't stop. My security cameras caught Daniel lingering outside one evening, peeking through the window. Claire created fake accounts to send me cruel messages, calling me heartless, saying the children were crying every night. Once, someone even left a bag of garbage on my porch with a note that read, "This is what you are." Each incident cut me, but each one also hardened me. Every page of documentation I added to the folder Mr. Harris gave me felt like building armor. I wasn't powerless anymore. And the more they tried to break me, the stronger my determination became. One night, as I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by sketches from art class and travel brochures, I realized something profound. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to hold my family together. I wasn't waiting for their approval. I was holding myself together. And that was enough. The following week, the cease and desist letter reached Daniel and Claire. I didn't see their faces when they opened it, but I could imagine it. The anger, the disbelief, the wounded pride. By Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang again and again. I ignored each call, until finally a text appeared from Daniel. "I can't believe you'd stoop this low, Mom. A lawyer? Against your own family? You've lost it." I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. Then slowly, I typed back, "Family doesn't stalk, harass, or humiliate the people they love. This was my only choice." His reply came almost instantly. "Claire is furious. The kids don't understand why you're attacking us. They're heartbroken." My hands shook, but I didn't answer. For years, guilt had been my leash. But now I saw it for what it was. A trap. The next day, Evelyn found me in the garden, clipping dead roses. "I saw Daniel storming past your house earlier," she said, her brows furrowed. "He looked dangerous." I swallowed hard. "I'm documenting everything. The lawyer told me to." She touched my shoulder. "Margaret, you can call the police if you feel unsafe. Promise me you will." That night, I sat at the kitchen table and reread all 3 lists I had written. They reminded me why I was fighting, why I couldn't back down. I thought of Emma and Thomas, their little faces pressed against mine, whispering, "Do you still love us?" My heart ached. I wanted them to know my love hadn't changed. But I couldn't keep showing that love in ways that destroyed me. By Thursday, another storm arrived. This time in the form of a letter slid under my door. No envelope, just folded pages written in Claire's sharp, cold handwriting. "Margaret, you've humiliated us. You've embarrassed Daniel in front of his colleagues and poisoned the children's minds with your bitterness. You've always been difficult, always needy, always dramatic. We tolerated you out of respect for Daniel. But enough is enough. If you want any relationship with Emma and Thomas, you'll drop this nonsense immediately. Otherwise, you're cutting yourself off forever." The words blurred as I read them, my chest rising and falling quickly. I read them 3 times, each line sinking deeper like poison. For a moment, I almost believed them. Almost. Then I remembered Rosa's voice from the hospital. "Sometimes people confuse obligation with love. But real love shows up." I set the letter down and whispered into the empty room. "No more. Not again." The next morning, I met Mr. Harris at his office. I handed him the letter without a word. He read it carefully, his jaw tightening. "This is intimidation," he said flatly. "We can file for a protective order. Are you ready for that?" I hesitated. My heart raced. A protective order against my own son and his wife? The thought made me nauseous. But then I thought of the photos, the stalking, the Facebook lies, the garbage on my porch. And I thought of Emma and Thomas, growing up learning that manipulation and cruelty were normal. "Yes," I said finally. My voice was quiet but steady. I'm ready. The paperwork began that day. That evening, as I left his office, the city lights glowed against the dark sky. I stood for a long moment on the sidewalk, feeling both terrified and strangely free. For decades, I had been the one who gave in, who said yes when I wanted to say no, who endured to keep the peace. And here I was, finally choosing myself. When I arrived home, Evelyn was waiting on the porch with a casserole in her hands. I thought you might not feel like cooking, she said. I smiled, tears filling my eyes. You're too good to me. No, she said firmly. I'm just treating you the way you've always deserved to be treated. Later that night, lying in bed, I let the tears fall. Not from sadness this time, but from release. For the first time in decades, I wasn't crying because someone had hurt me. I was crying because I had finally protected myself. Still, the nights were long. The phone buzzed constantly. Unknown numbers, messages, voicemails. I stopped listening. I turned the phone off, placed it in the drawer, and picked up my sketchbook instead. Each stroke of the pencil, each splash of color, became like armor. By Saturday, something inside me shifted again. I woke up early, booked a flight to Rome, and hit confirm before fear could stop me. My chest pounded, but when the email confirmation appeared, I laughed out loud. For the first time in years, I wasn't living in reaction to Daniel or Claire. I was living for me. That afternoon, I sat with Evelyn on the garden bench, showing her the itinerary. Her eyes sparkled. You really did it? I really did, I whispered, my smile trembling. When do we leave? She asked. In 3 weeks, I said. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a door swinging wide open. But as the sun set and the air grew cool, my phone buzzed again. Against my better judgment, I looked. It was a picture message, from an unknown number. My hands went cold as I opened it. It was a photo of me in my garden that morning, crouched by the roses. The angle was from across the street. The caption beneath read, "Always watching." My breath caught. My hands trembled. I looked out the window into the dark street, but saw nothing. The shadows stretched long, silent, and empty. For the first time in this battle, I felt real fear. That night, I hardly slept. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside made my heart leap. The image on my phone, me kneeling in my own garden, unaware of being watched, haunted me. I sat by the window with all the lights on, waiting for morning. At sunrise, I called Mr. Harris. My voice shook as I told him about the photo. He was silent for a moment, then said firmly, "This is serious, Margaret. It's no longer just harassment. It's stalking. You need to contact the police immediately." By noon, 2 officers were standing in my living room, their notepads ready. I showed them the picture, the letter, the voicemails, the screenshots from Facebook. They listened quietly, their expressions grim. "Mrs. Green," one of them said finally, "you've done exactly the right thing by documenting all this. We'll file a report and increase patrols in your area. If you feel unsafe at any moment, call us. Don't hesitate." As they left, Evelyn slipped into the room with 2 cups of tea. She set one down in front of me, her face soft with concern. "You're not alone," she reminded me. "Not anymore." Her words soothed me, but the fear still lingered. I tried to distract myself, attended my art class, cooked small meals, walked in the garden, but I felt eyes on me wherever I went. Then, 2 days later, the police called. "Mrs. Green, we've identified the source of the photo. It came from a disposable phone registered to Claire. We can't prove she took it herself, but all evidence points in her direction." I sank into my chair, the relief mingled with sorrow. So it was her. All along. "Yes, ma'am. Your lawyer can use this in court. And with your protective order request, it strengthens your case." I thanked them, my body trembling. Evelyn hugged me tightly when I told her. "See? The truth always comes out," she whispered. The hearing for the protective order came the following week. I sat in the courtroom, my hands cold, my heart pounding. Daniel and Claire were across the aisle, Claire's expression icy, Daniel's jaw tight. Emma and Thomas weren't there, thank God, but the absence of their laughter, their little voices, weighed on me. Mr. Harris spoke calmly, presenting the evidence. The Facebook posts, the letters, the stalking photo. I could feel Claire's glare burning into me, but I kept my head high. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was firm. Mrs. Green, you have demonstrated a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation. This court grants your request for a protective order. Daniel and Claire are prohibited from contacting you directly or indirectly for 1 year. Any violation will be treated as a criminal offense. The gavel struck, and just like that, the weight I had carried for decades began to lift. Daniel's face was pale with shock. Claire muttered something under her breath as they stormed out, but I didn't look at them. I stared at my hands, trembling but free. Outside the courthouse, Evelyn hugged me so tightly I thought I might break. You did it, she said, her voice full of pride. You finally chose yourself. That evening, back at home, I opened my laptop and pulled up the flight confirmation for Italy. 3 weeks. For the first time, the countdown didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a beginning. The day of departure came faster than I imagined. At the airport, Evelyn and I wheeled our suitcases side by side, both of us laughing nervously like schoolgirls on an adventure. As the plane took off, I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the city below shrink until it was nothing but tiny dots of light. Somewhere down there, Daniel and Claire were probably fuming, spinning their story, convincing themselves they were the victims. But I no longer cared. Their truth wasn't mine anymore. Rome was everything I dreamed of. Sunlight on ancient stones, narrow streets filled with laughter, food that tasted like love. Evelyn and I wandered museums, drank wine in little cafes, and sat by the Trevi fountain making wishes like teenagers. For the first time in decades, I laughed without guilt. I breathed without heaviness. One evening, as we sat on a terrace overlooking the city, Evelyn asked softly, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" I thought about it for a long time. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. Forgiveness means setting yourself free. And I already feel free. When we returned home weeks later, my cottage no longer felt like a cage. It felt like a sanctuary. The roses were blooming, the notepad lay on the table filled with dreams I was finally chasing, and my heart felt whole again. One night, I sat in the garden with a candle flickering beside me, writing the final line in my notepad. I will never beg for love again. The people who truly love me will never make me beg. And with that, I closed the chapter on years of pain and opened the door to the rest of my life. Sparkle's moral lesson. Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. Love is not proven by blood or obligation. It is proven by presence, respect, and kindness. Never beg for the love you deserve. The moment you stop chasing those who make you feel small, you discover the strength to live for yourself, and the right people, the ones who truly care, will always find their way to you.